September 8, 1945. 17 days at sea, and Nurse Lieutenant Keiko Yamada still couldn't feel her feet. The USS Consolation's hold smelled like vomit and fear. 47 Japanese women prisoners sat in the darkness, waiting to die. "Do you think it'll be quick?" Yuki Tanaka's voice cut through the silence. 24 years old, former Army clerk, hands still shaking from her third suicide attempt. The scars on her wrists were fresh. No one answered. Keiko pressed her back against the cold metal hull. Her daughter Michiko would be 7 now. If she was alive. If Tokyo hadn't burned her to ash like it had burned everything else. "My brother wrote to me before Iwo Jima," Sachiko Ito whispered from the corner. 19 years old, the youngest, still believed in things. "He said Americans collect ears, teeth. They make necklaces from—" "Shut up." Midori Sato's voice was flat. "Just shut up." But Sachiko kept talking faster now, words tumbling out like water from a broken dam. "He said they torture prisoners for fun. He said they'll do things to us because we're women. He said we should have killed ourselves when we had the chance." A slap echoed in the darkness. Sachiko gasped. Someone had hit her. In the dim light filtering through the porthole, Keiko could see it was Fumiko, 41 years old, mother of 3, who hadn't spoken since her capture in Saipan. "Your brother is dead," Fumiko said quietly. "They're all dead, and we'll be dead soon too. So stop talking about it." The ship's engines changed pitch, slowing down. Every woman in that hold went rigid. "We're here," Yuki breathed. Keiko's heart hammered so hard she thought her ribs might crack. She stood on legs that barely worked and moved to the porthole. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them against the metal to make them stop. What she saw made her forget to breathe. San Francisco. Untouched. Clean. Alive. Buildings climbing up hills like they owned the sky. Electric lights blazing in broad daylight. Didn't they know there was a war? Cars moving on streets. People walking. A city that looked like it had never heard the word bomb. "Keiko?" Yuki's voice behind her. "What do you see?" "Come look." They crowded around the porthole, all 47 of them pushing desperate to see the enemy's homeland before they died in it. Sachiko started crying first. "It's not fair. It's not fair. Tokyo is ash. My whole neighborhood burned. My mother—" She couldn't finish. "They didn't suffer at all," Midori said, and her voice carried something dangerous. "We starved, we burned, we died, and they just kept living." The engine stopped. On deck, all prisoners on deck. The shout came in English, then Japanese. "Move now." This was it. Keiko grabbed Yuki's hand. Yuki grabbed Sachiko's. One by one, they formed a chain, 47 women about to face whatever hell awaited them, but facing it together. The stairs up to the deck felt like climbing to the gallows. Each step was too fast, too slow, time stretching and compressing until Keiko couldn't tell if seconds or hours were passing. Her legs moved automatically. Military training overriding animal terror. Sunlight hit her face like a fist. She raised her hand to block it squinting. And when her eyes adjusted, she saw them. American soldiers, standing in formation on the dock below. 30, maybe 40 of them. Tall, impossibly tall. Uniforms so crisp they looked like they'd never been worn. Boots that caught the sun like mirrors. "Oh my God," Yuki whispered beside her. "What?" Keiko couldn't look away from the soldiers. Something about them was wrong. Not wrong like dangerous wrong, like unexpected. Wrong like nothing they'd been told. "Look at their faces." Keiko looked and understood. The soldiers didn't look like demons. They didn't look like killers or torturers or monsters. They looked like movie stars. Someone whispered behind her. "They look like movie stars." The words rippled through the group. Movie stars. Like Clark Gable. like Gary Cooper, like those Hollywood films they'd watched in secret before the war, the films that had been banned, the films that had shown them a world that couldn't possibly be real. Except it was real. It was standing right there. A soldier on the dock, blonde hair, strong jaw, eyes so blue, Keiko could see them from the ship, smiled. Actually smiled. At them. At his prisoners. Sachiko grabbed Keiko's arm. Why is he smiling? Why is he... I don't know. They're going to kill us, right? So why? I don't know. Keiko's voice came out sharper than she meant. She took a breath. I don't know anything anymore. The gangplank lowered with a metallic groan. Form up. The Japanese interpreter's voice. 2 lines move. They moved. Back straight. Chins up. If they were going to die, they would die like soldiers, not like animals. Keiko's foot touched American soil at 0847 hours. She knew, because she was staring at the watch on the nearest soldier's wrist, focusing on anything except his face, except the fact that he was standing at attention for them, showing them respect, treating them like they were welcome to the United States. The officer speaking was maybe 40, silver bars on his collar, kind eyes. That was what terrified Keiko most. The kindness in his eyes. You will be transported to Camp Stoneman for processing. You will be treated in accordance with the Geneva Convention. You will not be harmed. Keiko translated without thinking her English rough but functional. Around her the women stared. He's lying, Midori hissed. It's a trick. They're going to... Ma'am. The officer was looking at Keiko. Are you the translator? Yes. I speak English. Some. Good. Tell your group that we'll be loading into trucks now. It's about an hour to camp. An hour. 1 more hour of not knowing. 1 more hour of this horrible suspension between terror and confusion. The trucks were waiting canvas-covered wooden benches inside. As Keiko climbed in, she saw it. A photograph clipped to the dashboard. An American soldier, the driver probably with his arm around a woman in a summer dress. They were laughing. Behind them a house with a white fence, a tree, a tire swing. Normal. So horrifyingly, impossibly normal. Keiko sat down hard. The truck started moving and San Francisco unfolded outside the canvas opening. The women pressed against it, staring like children, like prisoners getting their last look at the world. There's a bakery, Fumiko said suddenly. First words she'd spoken since the slap. Look, in the window. Bread. Just sitting there. Loaves and loaves of bread. And people buying it? Yuki added. Like it's normal. Like there's not a war. She stopped. Was. Like there wasn't a war. Sachiko was crying again. We ate grass. In Saipan we ate grass and bugs and... She covered her mouth. And they have bakeries. A woman Keiko didn't know well, Reiko, a radio operator from Okinawa, laughed. A wild, broken sound. We lost to this. We lost to people who shop for bread while we're dying. We lost because they could shop for bread, Midori said quietly. Don't you see they never had to choose? Guns or butter, war or life. They just had everything. The truck fell silent except for the engine and the crying. Camp Stoneman appeared through the canvas like something from another planet. White buildings, neat rows, American flags snapping in the wind, soldiers walking with purpose but not urgency, everything clean, everything organized, everything working. They were unloaded and formed up again. Keiko's legs were shaking. 17 days of travel, minimal food, constant fear. Her body was giving up even if her mind wasn't ready. A woman approached. American. Nurse's uniform with a Red Cross armband. Brown hair pulled back. Smiling. Good morning, she said in broken Japanese. I am Lieutenant Sarah Morrison. We will help you now. Please follow. Nobody moved. Lieutenant Morrison's smile flickered. I know you're scared, but I promise. Why? Keiko heard herself say. Why are you being kind to us? The American nurse looked at her for a long moment. Because that's what we do here. We killed your soldiers. Yes. We would have killed more. If we could have. I know. So why? Because you lost, Lieutenant Morrison said simply. The war is over. You're prisoners now, not enemies. And we don't torture prisoners. We help them. That's what makes us different. The words hung in the air like smoke. Come, the nurse said. Please, let us help you. She turned and walked toward a building marked Medical Facility in both English and Japanese. After a moment that felt like years, the women followed. Inside was cooler, cleaner. The smell hit Keiko first antiseptic and something else. Something sweet and fresh that she couldn't place. Soap, Yuki whispered. That's soap. Real soap. They were divided into groups. Keiko ended up with Yuki Sachiko Midori and Fumiko in a white room with 3 American nurses waiting. Please undress for examination, one said through an interpreter. This was it. This was where it would start. The humiliation, the violation. The just a medical exam, the nurse said gently. We need to check for diseases, malnutrition, injuries. That's all. Keiko looked at the others. Yuki's face was white. Sachiko was shaking. Midori's jaw was clenched so tight, Keiko could see the muscles jumping. Together, Keiko said. We do this together. They undressed. The examination was clinical, professional. The nurses checked their vital signs with gentle hands, looked in their mouths, their ears, their eyes. When they found the scars on Yuki's wrists, the nurse didn't comment, just made a note and moved on. Blood pressure low, one nurse said to another in English. Severe malnutrition, probable anemia. Mark for supplemental nutrition, the other replied. They were talking about treatment, about care. I don't understand, Sachiko whispered. Why aren't they hurting us? Maybe they will later, Midori said. But she didn't sound convinced. After the exam, they were led to another room, shower facilities. Keiko braced herself for cold water, for rough handling, for whatever came next. The water came on hot, actually, genuinely, impossibly hot. Sachiko gasped. Yuki made a sound that might have been a sob. Fumiko turned her face up to the spray and stood there, not moving, just letting the hot water pour over her. Keiko stepped under her own shower head and felt something break inside her chest. The water was hot. The soap was real. The shampoo smelled like flowers. And around her 47 women who had expected death were crying great, heaving sobs that echoed off the tiles. My daughter is dead, Keiko heard herself say. The words came out of nowhere. She's dead, and I'm standing in hot water, and I don't understand anything anymore. My brother died telling me Americans were monsters, Sachiko said through her tears. He died believing that, and he was wrong. He died for a lie. My government left us, Yuki said. Her voice was shaking. The Emperor's voice on the radio said, endure the unendurable, and then just left us. But these people, these enemies, they're feeding us, washing us, treating us like humans. Fumiko finished. The first full sentence she'd spoken. They're treating us like we're human. The showers ran and ran. The women stood under the hot water and cried. Not from pain, not from fear, but from something more complicated. Something that hurt worse. Cognitive dissonance. That was the term, though Keiko wouldn't learn it for years. The pain of holding 2 contradictory truths at the same time. We were told they were demons. They are treating us with kindness. One of these things had to be false. And if one was false, what else might be? Keiko turned off her shower and stood there dripping. Around her, the others were doing the same. They looked at each other, 47 women who had gone into those showers believing one thing and come out believing nothing at all. What do we do now? Sachiko asked. She looked impossibly young, water dripping from her hair, eyes wide and lost. Keiko didn't have an answer, but she thought about the American nurse's smile, about the photograph in the truck, the soldier with his wife and his house and his normal, impossible life, about the hot water that nobody had rationed or denied them. "We survive," she said finally. "We watch, we learn, and we figure out what the truth is." And if the truth is that we were wrong. Yuki's voice was small. If everything we believed was a lie. Keiko pulled on the clean clothes they'd been given, American prison uniforms, but clean soft, better than anything she'd worn in months. Then we learned to live with that. But even as she said it, she knew learning to live with that truth would be harder than any torture the Americans could have devised, because torture breaks your body. But kindness, unexpected, undeserved, inexplicable kindness that breaks your entire understanding of the world. And on that first day at Camp Stoneman, standing in borrowed clothes with hot water still in her hair, Keiko Yamada felt her worldview begin to crack. It was only the beginning. The real shattering would come later. But standing there surrounded by women who were crying and confused and alive when they'd expected to be dead, Keiko understood one thing with terrible clarity. The war hadn't ended when the Emperor surrendered. For them, it was just beginning. The mess hall smelled like something from a dream Keiko had forgotten she'd had. 11:30 hours, September 8th, 1945. 4 hours since they'd arrived. They filed in wearing their new prison uniforms, gray cotton, clean, soft against skin that had known nothing but rough wool and dirt for months. The room was long filled with tables, and at the far end, oh God. Yuki stopped walking. Is that real food? Steam rose from metal serving trays. Keiko could see chicken, actual chicken, golden and glistening. Mashed potatoes, green beans, bread, butter, milk in glass pitchers. It's a trick, Midori said flatly. They'll feed us, then kill us. Fat prisoners are easier to... Shut up. Fumiko's voice cut through. Just shut up and let me look at it for one more second before you ruin it. An American soldier stood by the food line, young, maybe 22, with red hair and freckles. He smiled at them. Ladies, come on, don't be shy. Grab a tray. We got plenty. The translator repeated it in Japanese, but they'd all heard. They'd all understood. Sachiko picked up a tray with hands that shook. The metal clattered against the serving line. She moved forward like someone walking through a minefield, each step careful, waiting for the trap to spring. The red-haired soldier, his name tag said Cooper, ladled chicken onto her plate. A full breast. Then potatoes. Then beans. Then he put 2 pieces of bread on the side and added a pat of butter. There you go, miss, he said. You need more, you just come back here. Sachiko stared at the food like it might bite her. Keiko went next. Then Yuki. Then all 47 of them, one by one, receiving more food on a single plate than they'd seen in weeks, months maybe. They sat at the tables in complete silence. Nobody ate. They just stared. My children are starving in Tokyo, Fumiko said suddenly. Her voice was flat dead. My children are eating whatever they can find in the ruins, and I'm sitting here looking at chicken. Don't eat it then, Midori snapped. Starve in solidarity. See if your children thank you for it. That's not what I... Then what do you want us to do? Midori's voice rose. You want us to feel guilty for eating fine. I feel guilty. I feel guilty for being alive. I feel guilty for being captured. I feel guilty for every single thing. But I'm still going to eat because I'm not going to die for your moral purity. The mess hall went quiet. Even the American soldiers looked over. Fumiko picked up her fork. Her hand was shaking so badly she could barely hold it. She cut a piece of chicken, brought it to her mouth, and ate. And then she started crying. Around the room, 46 other women did the same. Eating and crying. Crying and eating. The sound of it filled the mess hall. Forks on plates, quiet sobs, the occasional hiccup of someone trying to hold it together and failing. Keiko chewed mechanically. The chicken was good. That was the worst part. It was actually good. Seasoned, cooked, perfectly tender. Her body screamed for her to eat faster, to shove it all in, but her mind kept showing her images of Michiko 7 years old, maybe dead, probably starving if she wasn't dead. And here was her mother, eating American chicken. "This is what killed us," Yuki said quietly. She was staring at her milk. Not their bombs, not their ships. This. They were eating like this the whole time. Their soldiers were eating like this, and we were eating grass. "Don't be stupid," Midori said, but her voice was softer now. "Bombs killed us. Planes killed us. Ships killed us." "No." Yuki looked up. "Those things won the war. But this is why they could build those things. You can't fight a war on grass and rats. You can't build planes when your workers are starving. We lost before the first bomb dropped because we never had enough to eat." The observation settled over the table like ash. A woman Keiko barely knew. Hanako, a supply clerk from Okinawa, laughed bitterly. "So we died for rice. That's what you're saying. The whole empire, all those speeches about honor and glory, and we died because they had more food. We died because they had more everything," Fumiko said. She'd stopped crying. Her face was wet, but her voice was steady. "And we were told we could win anyway. We were told spirit would overcome material. We were told the gods would protect us." "The gods did protect us," Sachiko said suddenly. She was the youngest, still believed things. "We're alive. We survived." "The Americans protected us," Midori corrected. "Not the gods. Not the emperor. The people we were supposed to hate." Sachiko's face crumpled. "Don't say that. We can't think like that." "Why not?" "It's true." "Because if it's true, then my brother died for nothing. My father died for nothing. Every single person we lost died for a lie." She was shouting now. Other tables were turning to look. An American officer started walking over. Keiko grabbed Sachiko's hand. "Stop. Not here. Not now." "When then?" Sachiko's face was streaming with tears. "When do we talk about it? When do we say it out loud? That we were lied to, that everything we believed was later." Keiko's grip tightened. "We'll talk later, I promise, but not here." The American officer had reached their table. He was older, maybe 50, with kind eyes that Keiko was starting to hate. "Everything okay here, ladies?" The translator started to repeat the question, but Keiko answered in English. "We are fine. Thank you, sir." He looked at Sachiko, still crying. Looked at the barely touched food. Looked at the 47 women who'd gone quiet again. "I know this is hard," he said. The translator caught up, repeating in Japanese. "I know you're confused and scared, but I give you my word, nobody here is going to hurt you. You're prisoners of war under American protection, and that means something. That means you're safe." Safe. The word hung in the air, like smoke from a cigarette. Were they safe? Or were they being fattened up for something worse? Was this kindness real or tactical? And which answer was more terrifying? The officer walked away. The women finished their meals in silence. That afternoon, they were assigned barracks. Building 7, Camp Stoneman, California. 47 women split into 2 rooms, one with 23, one with 24. Bunk beds with actual mattresses. Wool blankets, pillows, a stove for heat, windows with screens instead of bars. "It's nicer than my house in Tokyo," Yuki said, sitting on her bunk. "Before the war, I mean." "It's nicer than officers' quarters in Saipan," Midori added. Keiko lay down on her mattress and felt springs underneath. Real springs. She pressed her hand against it, testing. Soft. Not comfortable exactly, but compared to bamboo mats and bare ground, it might as well have been a cloud. A knock on the door made them all jump. Lieutenant Sarah Morrison entered, carrying a clipboard and wearing that same gentle smile. "Good afternoon. I hope you're settling in okay." She spoke in English. The words took Keiko a moment to process, to translate in her head. "We have work assignments starting tomorrow," Lieutenant Morrison continued. The translator appeared behind her, a Japanese-American woman in an army uniform. "Nothing too strenuous. We need help in the hospital, the library, the laundry. Some of you might work in the base gardens. Everyone will be paid." "Paid," Keiko repeated the word in Japanese, not sure she'd heard correctly. "Paid," the translator confirmed. "In camp script. You can use it at the base store for personal items." The women stared. "You're going to pay us?" Midori's voice was sharp. "For what?" "So we can buy things. We're prisoners." Lieutenant Morrison's expression didn't change. "You're prisoners who'll be here for a while. Keeping you busy is better than keeping you bored. And treating you fairly is it's just what we do." "Why?" The question burst out of Keiko before she could stop it. "Why are you treating us like this? We're the enemy. We killed your soldiers. We would have killed more if we could have. So why?" "Because the war is over," Lieutenant Morrison said simply. "And because you're people. That's enough reason." She left them with the clipboard a list of work assignments to be filled out, preferences, noted skills documented. As if they were employees, not prisoners. As if their preferences mattered. That night, the 47 women gathered in one of the barracks after lights out. Keiko found herself somehow in charge of this meeting, though no one had officially appointed her. Maybe it was because she spoke the best English. Maybe because she was older. Maybe because someone had to be. "We need to decide what we believe," she said. "Are they lying to us? Is this all an act?" "It has to be," Midori said. "No one treats their enemies like this." "Americans do," Yuki countered. "That's what makes them American. That's what we were fighting against, their softness, their decadence, their belief that everyone deserves comfort and kindness." "So you're saying we lost because they're too nice?" Midori's voice dripped sarcasm. "I'm saying we lost because we thought nice meant weak. But it doesn't. They were nice to their own people, so their people were strong enough to fight. We were harsh to our people, so our people were too weak to win." The words hung in the dark barracks. Fumiko spoke from her bunk. "My husband used to say that a nation that coddles its citizens can't compete with a nation that hardens them. He believed that. He died believing that." "Was he right?" Sachiko asked. "We're sitting in an American prisoner camp, eating their food, sleeping on their mattresses, about to be paid to do light work. What do you think?" No one had an answer. "I think," Yuki said slowly, "that we need to watch. We need to pay attention. Because either they're lying, in which case we need to be ready, or they're telling the truth. And if they're telling the truth, that means—" She didn't finish. She didn't need to. If they're telling the truth, that means everything we were taught was wrong. The next morning, September 9th, 1945, Keiko was assigned to work in the base hospital. She reported at 0800 hours to a white building that smelled like disinfectant and hope. A nurse met her, not Lieutenant Morrison, but another American woman, younger with brown hair and quick hands. Her name tag said Williams. "You have medical experience?" Nurse Williams asked through the translator. "I was a nurse, in Tokyo, before the war." "Good. We need someone to help prep surgery rooms, organize supplies, assist with basic care. Think you can handle that?" Could she? Keiko didn't know, but she nodded. The hospital was busy, not with battle wounds, the war was over, but with routine medical care. Soldiers with appendicitis, civilians with broken bones, a child with pneumonia, a child. Keiko stopped when she saw her. Maybe 5 years old, small for her age, lying in a bed with an oxygen mask over her face. Her mother sat beside her, holding her hand, crying quietly. "Officer's daughter," Nurse Williams said, noticing Keiko staring. "Pneumonia. She'll be fine. Antibiotics are working." Antibiotics. Medicine that actually worked. Not herbs and prayers and hope. Keiko moved to prep the next room, laying out instruments, checking supplies. Her hands knew what to do. Muscle memory from years of training. An American doctor entered, tall, dark-haired, maybe 35. His name tag said, Captain Chen. He nodded at her. "You're the new help." "Yes, sir." "You speak English pretty well." "I studied, before." "Good." He was checking charts, moving quickly. "We've got a appendectomy in 20 minutes. I need the room ready. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir." She could. She did. The surgery went smoothly. Captain Chen worked with quick, efficient movements. When it was over, he turned to her. "You have steady hands," he said. "You'd make a fine nurse. Still could if you wanted." The words hit her like a physical blow. You'd make a fine nurse. Present tense. As if she had a future. As if she could be something other than a prisoner, a defeated enemy, a woman waiting to go home to ruins. "Thank you, sir," she managed. That evening back in the barracks, she told the others about it. "He said you'd make a fine nurse," Yuki repeated. Like a real compliment. "Like he meant it," Keiko said. Not mocking, not cruel, just honest. Sachiko was sitting on her bunk holding something small. When Keiko looked closer, she saw it was a chocolate bar, American chocolate from the base store. "I bought it with script they gave me for working in the library," Sachiko said. Her voice was wondering. "They actually paid me, and the store actually had things, and I bought chocolate." She unwrapped it slowly, broke off a piece, and put it in her mouth. Her eyes closed. "My father used to bring me chocolate before the war," she said. "On special occasions. It was expensive, rare. And here I am eating American chocolate that I bought with money they paid me for organizing their books." "Did you eat any of their books?" Midori asked, trying for humor. Nobody laughed. "I wrote a letter home today," Fumiko said quietly. "They let us write letters. Supervised, censored, but still. I wrote to my sister in Osaka. I told her I was alive. I told her I was safe. I told her the Americans were treating us well." "Did you mean it?" Yuki asked. "I don't know. I don't know what's true anymore." That became their reality over the next weeks. Work during the day, questions at night. Keiko in the hospital learning that American medicine worked faster, better, more reliably than anything she'd used in Japan. Yuki in the library surrounded by books she couldn't read but could organize, seeing titles about democracy and freedom and rights. Sachiko helping in the base school, watching American children learn and play and not bow to anyone. Midori in the gardens growing vegetables that would feed everyone, prisoners and captors alike. And every night they gathered and tried to make sense of it. "They're turning us," Midori said one night 3 weeks in. October now, the California air turning cooler. "This is all strategic. Treat us well so we'll be sympathetic when we go home. So we'll speak well of America." "So what if they are?" Yuki shot back. "So what if this is all calculated? It's still working. They're still feeding us and paying us and treating us like humans. Doesn't that matter?" "Of course it matters. But we can't forget who we are. We're Japanese. We serve the Emperor. We can't just—" "The Emperor surrendered," Sachiko interrupted. Her voice was flat. She'd changed these past weeks. Gotten harder. "He got on the radio and surrendered and told us to endure the unendurable. He abandoned us. But these people, these Americans we were supposed to hate, they're taking care of us. They're our captors. They're our caregivers. There's a difference." The argument escalated. Voices rising. Old certainties clashing with new realities. Fumiko stood up. "Enough. We're not going to solve this tonight. Maybe we're never going to solve it. But I know one thing: we're alive, we're healthy, we're safe. And tomorrow we wake up and go to work and eat 3 meals and sleep in warm beds. And if that makes us traitors, then call me a traitor. I don't care anymore." She walked out. Others followed. Keiko sat on her bunk thinking about Captain Chen's words. About steady hands. About having a future. About how kindness could be a weapon more devastating than any bomb. Because bombs destroy your body, your city, your country. But kindness, unexpected, undeserved, confusing kindness, destroys your certainty. And without certainty, what are you? In the darkness of Building 7. Camp Stoneman, California. 47 Japanese women lay in warm beds with full stomachs and tried to figure out who they were supposed to be now. And even in their confusion, even in their guilt and their fear and their doubt, they all knew one truth they couldn't speak aloud. This kindness hurt worse than any cruelty could have. Because cruelty, they understood. Cruelty, they could fight. But how do you fight someone who feeds you when you're hungry, heals you when you're sick, and treats you like you matter? You don't. You can't. You just survive it. And hope that whatever person you become on the other side is someone you can recognize in the mirror. Though even in hunger and darkness, there were hearts that still whispered hope, fragile, confused, guilty hope, but hope nonetheless. Hope came in on November 3, 1945, wearing lipstick. The base store opened at 0900 hours every morning. Keiko stood outside with Yuki and Sachiko holding camp scrip in her hand, real paper money they'd earned from their work. $20 each for the month of October. 20 American dollars that could buy things. "I don't know what to get," Sachiko whispered. She was nervous, fidgeting with her uniform buttons. "What do we even need?" "Need and want are different things," Yuki said. She was staring through the window at the displays inside. "We don't need anything. They give us everything, but wanting, that's different." The door opened. An American soldier held it for them, smiling. "Morning, ladies. You girls shopping today?" Keiko nodded, not trusting her voice. Inside was overwhelming. Shelves stocked with soap, toothpaste, combs, mirrors, magazines, books, candy. And in the corner, cosmetics. Lipstick in 12 different shades. Powder. Rouge. Perfume in glass bottles that caught the light. Sachiko walked toward the cosmetics like someone in a trance. She picked up a lipstick, red, bright red, and held it like it might explode. "My mother wore lipstick," she said quietly. "Before the war. She had one tube she saved for special occasions. She died in the firebombing still wearing it." Yuki touched a bottle of perfume. "Chanel No. 5. My sister worked in a department store in Tokyo. She used to let me smell the tester. She said it smelled like Paris, like freedom, like everything Japan wasn't allowed to be." "Is she alive?" Keiko asked gently. "I don't know. My last letter said she was in Hiroshima." Yuki's voice broke. "In August. I don't know." They stood there among the abundance, 3 women who'd lost everything, holding objects that represented a world they'd been taught to despise. "We shouldn't," Sachiko said, but she was still holding the lipstick. "It's frivolous. It's American. It's $5, Keiko said. She picked up a lipstick herself, a softer shade, almost pink. "And we earned it. And we're allowed. So maybe we should." They bought the lipstick. They bought powder. Sachiko got perfume, not Chanel. Something cheaper, but it smelled like flowers. They walked back to the barracks carrying their purchases like stolen goods. That night, Fumiko watched them apply the makeup with an expression Keiko couldn't read. "What?" Sachiko asked defensively. "We earned the money. We're allowed." "I know," Fumiko said. "I'm not judging. I'm just thinking about my daughters. They're 9 and 11. They're eating whatever they can scavenge in Osaka. And I'm watching you put on lipstick." The words hit like stones. Sachiko's hand froze halfway to her mouth. "I'm sorry. I didn't think." "No, don't apologize." Fumiko stood up. "Don't apologize for being alive. Don't apologize for having a moment of normalcy in this insane situation. My daughters would want you to wear that lipstick. They'd want you to feel human. So wear it." She walked out before anyone could respond. Keiko looked at her reflection in the small mirror they shared. The lipstick made her look different. Younger, maybe. More alive. Or maybe just more American. "Do you think we're betraying them?" Yuki asked quietly. "Our families, our country, every person who died." Do you think this wearing makeup, eating good food, sleeping in warm beds? Do you think this is betrayal? I think, Keiko said slowly, that betrayal implies choice. And I don't know if we have one. But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. They had choices. They could refuse the food, refuse the work, refuse to cooperate. Some prisoners in other camps had done exactly that. Hunger strikes, silent resistance, maintaining dignity through refusal. But here in Camp Stoneman, with hot showers and 3 meals a day, and Americans who smiled at them, resistance felt harder than surrender, and that terrified her more than any torture could have. The next morning brought something new. Lieutenant Morrison appeared during breakfast with an announcement. "We're starting a community outreach program," she said through the translator. "Some of you will be allowed to work outside the camp. Supervised, of course. But there are churches, schools, and hospitals in Pittsburgh that need help. Anyone interested?" The mess hall went silent. Work outside the camp. Among Americans. Among civilians. Among the enemy who weren't enemies. Among the demons who looked like movie stars and treated them like people. "I'll go," Keiko heard herself say. Yuki grabbed her arm. "Are you crazy? What if what? What if they're nice to us there too? What if we see more evidence that everything we believed was wrong?" Keiko pulled free. "I'm tired of being confused inside these walls. Maybe out there I'll understand." 12 women volunteered. Keiko, Yuki Sachiko Midori, and 8 others whose names Keiko was still learning. They were loaded into a truck on November 10, 1945, with 2 American guards who carried no visible weapons. The church was 10 minutes from camp. White walls, a tall steeple, and a sign that read, "Pittsburgh Community Church, all welcome." All welcome. Even enemy prisoners. Inside smelled like coffee and old wood. American women, civilian women in house dresses and practical shoes were setting up tables. They looked up when the Japanese women entered, and for a moment nobody moved. Then one of the American women smiled. She was maybe 45 with gray in her hair and kind eyes. "Oh, good you're here. We're preparing care packages for families whose sons are still overseas. Can you help us pack boxes?" The translator repeated it. The Japanese women stared. "I know it seems strange," the American woman continued. She walked toward them, hand extended. "My name is Margaret Sullivan. My son is with the occupation forces in Japan right now. And I figure, well, if someone over there is being kind to him, maybe I can be kind to you ladies. Does that make sense?" It didn't make sense. It made no sense at all. Her son was occupying their country, and she was asking them to help pack care packages. But Keiko shook her hand anyway. "Yes, ma'am, we help." The work was simple. Pack boxes with soap, toothpaste, socks, candy letters from home. Assembly line work that required no language skills. The American women worked alongside them, chatting among themselves, occasionally trying to communicate through gestures and broken words. "You girls must miss your families terribly," Margaret Sullivan said at one point. She was looking at Sachiko, who'd gone very still. The translator repeated it. Sachiko's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, very much." "I'm so sorry," Margaret said, and her voice carried such genuine compassion that Sachiko started crying in earnest. Margaret pulled her into a hug, just pulled her in and held her while Sachiko sobbed into her shoulder. This American woman, whose son was occupying Japan, hugging this Japanese girl who might have shot at that son if given the chance. Keiko watched it happen and felt something crack wider in her chest. "How?" she asked the translator. "How can she do that? How can she be kind to us when our country—" "She's a Christian," the translator said simply. "They believe in loving their enemies, in turning the other cheek, in forgiveness. We killed her countrymen. Yes. And she hugs us. Yes. Why? The translator looked at her for a long moment. Because that's what winning looks like. Not just defeating your enemy on the battlefield, but proving your way of life is worth defending. America didn't just beat Japan with bombs, they beat Japan with this. She gestured at Margaret, still holding Sachiko. With the idea that all people deserve dignity, even enemies. Maybe especially enemies. The words settled into Keiko's bones like ice. That evening back at camp, the 12 women who'd gone to the church gathered in the barracks. The others wanted to hear everything. They were so nice, one woman, Reiko, kept saying. They kept offering us tea and cookies. They asked about our families. They wanted to know if we were being treated well. Did you tell them the truth? Midori asked sharply. What truth? That we eat better here than we ever did in Japan. That we sleep in warm beds and get paid for light work. That America treats its prisoners better than Japan treated its citizens. Reiko's voice was rising. What truth do you want me to tell? The truth that this is all propaganda, that they're manipulating us. Then let them manipulate me. At least I'm alive to be manipulated. The argument exploded, voices shouting over each other. Old certainties fighting new realities. Some women crying, others angry, all of them confused. Fumiko stood up on her bunk. Enough! The barracks went quiet. Listen to me, all of you. Fumiko's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. I got a letter today. From my sister in Osaka. She said my daughters are alive. They're living in a bomb shelter. They eat once a day if they're lucky. They have lice and infected cuts, and my youngest has pneumonia. But there's no medicine. She paused, breathing hard. She also said that American occupation forces are distributing food, that they're opening medical clinics, that they're treating Japanese civilians better than our own government ever did. And you know what I realized? My daughters have a better chance of surviving because Japan lost, because America won, because the people we called demons are feeding and healing the people we couldn't protect. She climbed down from the bunk. So yes, maybe this is manipulation. Maybe they're being nice to us for strategic reasons. But you know what? I don't care. I don't care why they're doing it. I only care that my daughters might live because of it. And if that makes me a traitor, then I'm a traitor. I'd rather be a living traitor than a dead patriot. She walked out. The door slammed behind her. Nobody spoke for a long time. Finally, Yuki said quietly, She's right. You all know she's right. It's not that simple. Midori protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Yes, it is. Yuki stood up. We were lied to. Our whole lives we were lied to. We were told Americans were monsters. We were told Japan was invincible. We were told the Emperor was divine. We were told spirit could overcome material, and every single thing we were told was a lie. Don't say that about the Emperor, Sachiko whispered, but she didn't sound like she believed it anymore. Why not? He surrendered. The divine Emperor surrendered. The man we were supposed to die for got on the radio and quit. And then these Americans, these people we were taught to hate, they fed us and healed us and treated us like human beings. So yes, we were lied to. And the sooner we accept that, the sooner we can figure out who we actually are. The silence that followed was profound. Keiko lay on her bunk that night, unable to sleep. Around her, 46 other women wrestled with the same questions. She could hear them: soft crying, restless movement, whispered prayers that no longer seemed to reach any god. On November 28, 1945, the camp held a movie night. They showed an American film, Holiday Inn, with Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire. The prisoners were invited to attend. The recreation hall filled with soldiers and prisoners, sitting in the same room watching the same screen. The lights went down and the movie began. Keiko had never seen anything like it. The colors were bright, vivid, almost painful. The actors were beautiful, well-fed, smiling. They sang and danced through a world that seemed to exist only in dreams. A world where people worried about romance and business and holiday celebrations, instead of where their next meal would come from. Fred Astaire danced across the screen in a tuxedo, moving with casual grace. Confidence, radiating from every gesture. "Just like the soldiers here," Yuki whispered beside her. "The confidence, the ease, like they never doubted they'd win." Keiko looked around the darkened hall. The American soldiers watching the movie looked exactly like the men on screen. The same confidence, the same well-fed health, the same casual assumption that life would be good, that tomorrow would be better than today, that happiness was a reasonable expectation rather than an impossible dream. And she understood. Japan hadn't just lost a war. Japan had lost to a way of thinking, to a culture that believed people deserved comfort, that citizens deserved protection, that life itself was valuable beyond its service to the state. The movie ended. The lights came up. The American soldiers filed out laughing and talking. The Japanese women sat in stunned silence. "We tried to fight a dream," Keiko said quietly. "And you can't defeat a dream with bullets and bombs. You can only defeat it with a better dream. And we never had one." Sachiko was crying again. "My father died on Iwo Jima believing he was protecting our way of life. But our way of life was starvation and death and obedience. Their way of life is that." She pointed at the now dark screen. "Dancing and singing and believing tomorrow will be beautiful. And we died trying to destroy it." "Maybe we died trying to become it," Yuki said softly. "Maybe that's what the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere really was, not conquest, but envy. We wanted what they had. We just didn't know how to build it, so we tried to take it." The observation settled over them like snow. They walked back to the barracks in silence. The November air was cold, but not cruel. Above them, stars burned in a clear California sky. In the distance, Keiko could hear music from the Officers Club, American jazz, improvisational and free. In Building 7 that night, 47 women lay in their bunks and faced the truth they'd been avoiding for months. Everything they'd been taught was wrong. Everything they'd believed was lies. Everything they'd fought for had been built on propaganda and delusion. And the people they'd been raised to hate, the demons, the monsters, the enemies, they were just people. Flawed people, certainly. A country with its own problems and failures. But people who believed in something Japan hadn't. That ordinary citizens deserved happiness. That kindness was strength, not weakness. That tomorrow could be better than today. "What do we do now?" Sachiko asked the darkness. Keiko didn't have an answer. But she thought about Margaret Sullivan hugging a girl whose countrymen had killed hers. About Captain Chen telling her she'd make a fine nurse. About Private Cooper serving them food with a smile. About Lieutenant Morrison treating them with dignity they didn't deserve. "We remember," she said finally. "We remember that kindness exists, that another way is possible. And when we go home, if we go home, we try to bring some of this back with us." "Will they let us?" Yuki asked. "Will Japan let us talk about this?" "I don't know, but we have to try." Outside, the wind moved through the camp, carrying the smell of cooking food and the sound of American voices. Inside Building 7, 47 women who'd expected death had found something more complicated, a truth that shattered their certainty and forced them to rebuild their understanding of the world from nothing. It would have been easier to be tortured. Torture they could have resisted, endured, used to strengthen their resolve. But this kindness that revealed their entire worldview as fiction, this was breaking them in ways no cruelty ever could. And yet, even in their breaking, even in their confusion and guilt and grief, they all felt it, that small, fragile, terrifying thing growing in their chests. Hope. Not hope that they'd go home, not hope that Japan would recover, but hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a better way to be human. And that they'd seen it here in this prison camp from these enemies who'd shown them more mercy than their own government ever had. In the camp that was built to hold prisoners, whispers of transformation traveled through hearts faster than orders ever could, through wire and steel. Winter came to Camp Stoneman with rain instead of snow. December 1945 brought clouds that hung low over the barracks, turned the parade ground to mud, made everything gray and cold. Keiko stood in the hospital supply room on December 15th, counting bandages when Captain Chen found her. "Mail call brought something for your group," he said. "Letters from Japan. Lieutenant Morrison is distributing them now." Keiko's hands froze on the bandage box. Letters. From home. From the ruins. She ran. Building 7 was chaos when she arrived. Women crowding around Lieutenant Morrison, crying, shouting, grabbing at envelopes. The translator stood beside her, trying to maintain order. "One at a time. Ladies, please, one at a time." Keiko pushed through. "Is there, do I?" Lieutenant Morrison checked her list. "Yamada Keiko. Yes, here." The envelope was thin, dirty, creased. The handwriting was her sister's. Keiko's hands shook so badly she almost couldn't open it. The letter was short. 3 paragraphs. But those 3 paragraphs destroyed and rebuilt her world. Michiko was alive. 7 years old, living with Keiko's sister in what remained of their Tokyo neighborhood. She had survived the firebombings. She was malnourished, had lost 3 teeth to scurvy, couldn't attend school because there were no schools, but she was alive. The second paragraph said, American occupation forces were distributing food. That they'd opened a medical clinic. That they were rebuilding schools and hospitals. That the Americans in Japan were doing exactly what the Americans in California had done, treating their defeated enemies with incomprehensible kindness. The third paragraph asked when Keiko was coming home. Keiko sat down hard on her bunk and couldn't stop shaking. Michiko was alive. Her daughter was alive. And being fed by American soldiers. Protected by American doctors. Surviving because America had won. Around her, 46 other women were reading their own letters, experiencing their own earthquakes. Fumiko was laughing and crying simultaneously. My daughters. They're alive. Both of them. The Americans gave them medicine. Penicillin. My youngest would have died, but the Americans gave them medicine. Sachiko had gone white. My mother is dead. The firebombing. But my 2 younger brothers survived. They're in an orphanage run by American missionaries. Her voice cracked. American missionaries are raising my brothers. Yuki stared at her letter without speaking. Finally, she said, My sister was in Hiroshima. She survived the bomb. Barely. She's in an American hospital. Burns covering 60% of her body. But the Americans are treating her. They're trying to save her, even though Japan... She couldn't finish. She just folded the letter carefully and held it against her chest. Midori was the only one not crying. She sat on her bunk, letter in hand, face completely blank. Midori. Keiko moved to sit beside her. What does yours say? My family is dead. All of them. My parents, my 3 sisters, my grandmother, the firebombing of Osaka. They burned to death in our house. The words came out flat, emotionless. I'm sorry. I'm so... Don't. Midori looked at her. Her eyes were dry, but something in them had broken. Don't apologize. Don't say anything. Just... don't. That night, the barracks was quiet, except for crying. Different kinds of crying. Relief. Grief. Confusion. All of it tangled together until no one could tell which emotion was which. They saved our families, Yuki said into the darkness. The Americans are in our country, occupying our cities, and they're saving our families. We have to go back, Fumiko said. We have to see them. Hold them. But Her voice broke. I'm terrified. What if they hate us for being here, for being captured, for surviving? They won't hate us, Sachiko said, but she didn't sound convinced. Won't they? We're eating 3 meals a day while they starve. We sleep in warm beds while they live in bomb shelters. We are prisoners who live better than free citizens. How do we explain that? No one had an answer. January 1946 brought news. They would be repatriated, sent home. The process would take months' paperwork, transportation coordination with occupation authorities. But by spring, they would return to Japan. The announcement should have brought joy. Instead, it brought terror. "I don't want to go back," Sachiko whispered one night. They were in the mess hall eating dinner, beef stew, bread, butter, vegetables. "Is that terrible? Does that make me a traitor? You want to stay here?" Midori's voice was sharp. "With them? With the enemy." "They're not the enemy anymore. The war is over. And here I'm safe. I'm fed. I'm warm. I work in the library and organize books, and nobody judges me for being captured. But back there, back in Japan, I'll be a prisoner who survived. A woman who surrendered instead of dying. They'll call me a coward. They'll say I should have committed suicide." "They won't," Yuki said, but her voice lacked conviction. "They will. You know they will. Because that's what we were taught. Death before dishonor. And we chose life. We chose to live as prisoners. And now we have to go home and face people who'll think we should have died instead." The truth of it hung in the air like smoke. Keiko thought about Michiko. About holding her daughter again. About seeing her sister, her neighborhood, whatever remained of her life. But she also thought about leaving this place where she'd learned that kindness existed, that another way was possible, that she could be more than what Japan had told her she was supposed to be. "We're different now," she said quietly. "We can't pretend we're not. We've seen too much, learned too much. We know that everything we were taught was wrong. And when we go back, we have to carry that knowledge with us." "And do what with it?" Midori demanded. "Tell everyone that America is wonderful, that our enemy is better than we are. They'll call us traitors. They'll say we've been brainwashed." "Maybe we have been," Fumiko said. "Maybe that's exactly what this was, psychological warfare. Treat us well, so we'll spread pro-American sentiment when we return." "Does it matter?" Yuki asked. "Does it matter if it was strategic? The food was still real. The medicine still worked. The kindness still happened. You can't fake hot showers and chocolate and people who smile at you even though you're the enemy. You can if you're trying to win the peace after winning the war," Midori shot back. They argued about it for weeks, as January turned to February, as February turned to March. Some women convinced it had all been manipulation, others equally convinced it had been genuine. Most somewhere in between, unable to sort out truth from strategy, kindness from tactics. On March 23, 1946, they received their departure date. April 15th. They would leave from San Francisco, sail to Yokohama, be repatriated to their families and whatever remained of their lives. 3 weeks. 21 days left in America. The time moved too fast and too slow. Days blurring together while each moment felt suspended in amber. Keiko's last day in the hospital was April 10th. Captain Chen called her into his office. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "You've been an excellent assistant, the best I've had." "Thank you, sir. I mean it." He was looking at her seriously. "You have real skill. If things were different, if the war had never happened, you could have been a fine doctor. Not just a nurse, a doctor." The words hit her like a physical blow. A doctor, her, a woman. In Japan, that had been impossible. But he said it like it was obvious, like gender was irrelevant when talent existed. "I will remember that," she said. "When I go home, I will remember that someone believed I could be more than what I was told I could be." He handed her an envelope. "My address, in case you ever need anything, in case—" He paused. "In case you want to write and tell me how you're doing." She took it with shaking hands. "You would want to hear from me. From an enemy. The war is over, Miss Yamada. You were never my enemy. You were just a person on the other side of a terrible situation. And now that situation is ending. So no, not an enemy. Just someone I hope will be okay." She walked out of his office crying. The church women threw them a farewell party on April 12th. Margaret Sullivan brought a cake, actual cake, with frosting and candles. The women sang "For They Are Jolly Good Fellows" in English and Japanese, laughing at the pronunciation errors on both sides. Margaret hugged each of them goodbye. When she got to Sachiko, she held her for a long time. "You take care of yourself," Margaret said through the translator. "You survived this war. You survived capture. You survived being far from home and everything you knew. You're strong, sweetheart. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Sachiko sobbed into her shoulder. "My father would be ashamed of me, for being captured, for surviving." "Then your father was wrong," Margaret said firmly. "Survival isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing you can do. You remember that." Back at camp that night, the 47 women packed their few belongings. The clothes they'd arrived in cleaned and mended. The letters from home. Small items they'd bought at the store: a comb, a mirror, a book they couldn't read but kept anyway. Sachiko packed her red lipstick. "I'm taking it. I don't care what anyone says. I'm taking it to remember that I was human here. That someone treated me like I mattered." "We all matter," Yuki said quietly. "That's what they taught us. Not with words, with actions. Every hot shower, every meal, every time they called us miss instead of prisoner. They taught us that all people matter, even enemies." "Especially enemies," Keiko corrected. "Anyone can be kind to friends. Being kind to enemies, that's what separates civilization from barbarism." Fumiko laughed bitterly. "So Japan was barbaric and America was civilized. Is that what you're saying?" "I'm saying Japan was desperate and America was secure. Desperation makes people cruel. Security makes them kind. And if we remember that, if we carry that lesson home, maybe we can help build a Japan that's secure enough to be kind." "That's a beautiful dream," Midori said. "But dreams don't rebuild burned cities." "No," Keiko agreed. "But people do. People who've learned that another way is possible." April 15th, 1946. 0600 hours. They formed up outside Building 7 for the last time. The sky was clear California sun, just starting to rise. Their bags sat at their feet. Their faces were washed. Some wore lipstick, small acts of defiance against whoever might judge them back home. Lieutenant Morrison walked down the line, shaking hands with each woman. When she got to Keiko, she smiled. "Take care of yourself, Miss Yamada." "Thank you, Lieutenant, for everything." "No thanks necessary. You would have done the same if our positions were reversed." Would she? Keiko wanted to believe that. Wanted to think that given the chance, Japan would have treated American prisoners with the same dignity. But she remembered the propaganda, the hatred, the absolute certainty that Americans were less than human. And she knew the truth. Japan wouldn't have. Japan hadn't. And that was a shame she would carry forever. The trucks came. They loaded up. The drive to San Francisco took an hour, the same route they'd traveled 7 months ago, only now in reverse. Then they'd been terrified prisoners expecting death. Now they were confused survivors afraid of life. The ship waiting at Fort Mason was called the USS Marine Falcon. Not a prison ship, a proper transport with cabins and mess facilities and medical care. They boarded in silence. As the gangplank was raised, Keiko looked back at the dock. American soldiers stood in formation the same way they had when the women arrived, but now some were waving. Private Cooper, the red-haired boy who'd served them that first meal, was crying. "Good luck," he shouted. "Good luck, ladies." Other soldiers took up the call. "Good luck. Stay safe. Tell your families we're taking care of Japan." The ship's horn sounded. They were pulling away from the dock, away from California, away from America. Yuki grabbed Keiko's hand. "I'm scared." "Me too. What if everything we learned here doesn't matter? What if we get home and it's all the same?" "It won't be the same," Keiko said. "We're not the same. We can't pretend we are. We've seen what's possible. And we have to hold on to that. We have to." The coastline receded. America grew smaller. They stood on deck watching until they couldn't see land anymore, only ocean stretching in all directions. That night in the cabin she shared with Yuki Sachiko and Fumiko Keiko, lay awake thinking about Michiko, about holding her daughter, about seeing her sister, about whatever remained of her neighborhood, her city, her country. "Do you think we'll ever be okay?" Sachiko whispered from the bunk above. "After everything." "I think," Keiko said slowly, "that okay is different now. We won't be who we were, we can't be. But maybe that's good. Maybe who we were needed to die so who we could be could live." That's very philosophical. I learned it from Americans. They believe in second chances, in starting over, in becoming better than you were. Do you believe it? Keiko thought about Captain Chen telling her she could be a doctor, about Margaret Sullivan hugging Sachiko, about Lieutenant Morrison treating them with dignity they didn't deserve, about hot showers and chocolate and being called Miss instead of prisoner. "Yes," she said. "I believe it. I have to. Because if I don't believe we can be better, then everyone who died did so for nothing. And I can't accept that." The ship sailed on through dark water toward a country none of them really knew anymore, toward families who'd suffered while they'd been safe, toward judgment and shame and the hard work of rebuilding not just buildings, but beliefs. But they sailed together. 47 women who'd expected demons and found people, who'd been shown that kindness existed, that mercy was possible, that another way could work. They went home to ruins, but they carried something unbreakable inside them. Not hope exactly. Hope was too simple. But knowledge. The knowledge that they'd seen a glimpse of what humanity could be at its best. And that glimpse, however brief, however complicated, however strategic it might have been, that glimpse had changed them forever. Freedom had come, not when they left America, but when they realized they'd never really been imprisoned at all, just transformed in ways their captors might not have intended, but their hearts couldn't deny. The ruins of Yokohama appeared through morning fog on April 28, 1946. Keiko stood at the railing with the others watching what remained of Japan emerge from the gray. It wasn't a city anymore. It was a graveyard. Buildings reduced to skeletal frames, streets visible only as paths through rubble, burned-out husks of what had been factories, homes, schools, and everywhere people thin, hollow-eyed, moving through the devastation like ghosts. "Oh, God!" Yuki breathed beside her. "There's nothing left." "There's us," Fumiko said quietly. "We're left." The ship docked at 0830 hours. American occupation forces controlled the port soldiers with MP armbands, directing traffic, checking paperwork, maintaining order. The same efficiency, the same organization, the same casual competence they'd seen in California. But the Japanese people moving through the port looked at those soldiers with expressions Keiko couldn't read. Fear, gratitude, resentment, all three tangled together. They disembarked in silence. An American lieutenant checked their papers, stamped them, and said in careful Japanese, "Welcome home, ladies. Good luck." Welcome home, to ruins, to judgment, to whatever came next. A Japanese official was waiting thin, wearing a patched uniform, face set in rigid disapproval. He looked at the 47 women with barely concealed disgust. "Prisoners," he said. "Not a question. A statement. An accusation. Former prisoners," Keiko corrected. "Repatriated under the, I know what you are." His voice was ice. "You will register with the Military Affairs Office. You will submit to interviews. You will not speak publicly about your capture or imprisonment without authorization. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir." "You were supposed to die rather than surrender. You chose dishonor. The consequences of that choice are yours to bear." He walked away without another word. The 47 women stood in the rubble of Yokohama port and felt the weight of judgment settle on their shoulders like stones. "So it begins," Midori said flatly. "Welcome home, traitors." They were processed separately, sent to different parts of the country to reunite with families or what remained of families. Keiko, Yuki, and Sachiko were Tokyo-bound. Fumiko to Osaka. Midori to Nagasaki. The others scattered across the devastation that had been the Japanese Empire. They said their goodbyes on the platform of Yokohama Station, or what remained of it. Fumiko hugged each of them fiercely. "Remember what we learned," she said. "Remember that we saw another way. Don't let them make us forget." "They'll try," Midori said. Her face was hard. "They'll call us weak, corrupted, brainwashed. They'll say we should have died." "Then we prove them wrong by living well," Yuki said. "By being better than what they think we should be." "How very American of you," Midori said, but there was no real bite in it. The train to Tokyo took 3 hours through a landscape of destruction. Burned fields, collapsed factories, towns reduced to ash, and everywhere people rebuilding with whatever they could find, scraps of metal, bits of wood, their own bare hands. Sachiko started crying somewhere around Kawasaki. "It's all gone. Everything. How do we rebuild from this?" "The same way they're doing," Keiko said, pointing out the window at a family constructing a shelter from corrugated metal and rope. "One piece at a time, one day at a time." "But they weren't—" Sachiko couldn't finish. "They weren't prisoners who ate well while their country starved." Yuki finished for her. "No, they weren't. But we were. And we have to live with that." Tokyo Station was still standing miraculously. Damaged but functional. They stepped off the train into chaos, people everywhere. American soldiers directing traffic. Japanese police trying to maintain order, refugees with nowhere to go, sleeping on the platforms. Keiko's sister was supposed to meet her. She scanned the crowd looking for a familiar face, terrified she wouldn't recognize her own family after all this time. "Keiko!" She spun. Her sister Ayako was pushing through the crowd, thin, so thin Keiko almost didn't recognize her. Gray in her hair that hadn't been there before. Lines on her face, but alive, moving, real. They collided in a hug that knocked the air from Keiko's lungs. "You're home?" Ayako was crying. "You're actually home. I was so scared the letters stopped, and I thought, where is she?" Keiko pulled back. "Where's Michiko?" "At home. I didn't want her to see—" Ayako gestured at the chaos of the station. Come now. She's been asking for you every day for 7 months." The walk to Ayako's house, a generous term for the shelter she'd built in the ruins of their old neighborhood, took 30 minutes. Keiko tried not to stare at the devastation, tried not to compare it to the abundance she'd left behind in California. And then she saw her. Michiko, 7 years old, thin and small and wearing clothes clearly made from an old curtain, but alive. Standing in the doorway of the makeshift shelter, staring at her mother like she was seeing a ghost. "Mama!" Keiko ran. She scooped Michiko up and held her and couldn't stop crying. Her daughter was alive, solid, real, breathing against her neck. "You came back," Michiko whispered. "Everyone said you wouldn't. They said prisoners die, but you came back. I'll always come back to you. Always." That night in the shelter, Ayako had built from scavenged materials. Keiko held Michiko while she slept and tried to reconcile 2 realities. 7 months ago, she'd been sleeping on a mattress in California, eating 3 meals a day, working in a clean hospital with medicine that worked. Now she was lying on a bamboo mat in a drafty shelter. Her daughter's ribs visible through her thin nightgown. Listening to her sister explain how they survived on 200 calories a day until the Americans opened their distribution centers. "They saved us," Ayako said quietly. She was mending clothes by candlelight candles provided by American aid. The occupation forces. They brought food, medicine supplies. Without them, Michiko would have died. She had pneumonia in February. An American doctor gave her penicillin. For free. He didn't ask for anything. He just helped. They did the same for me, Keiko said. In California. They helped. Ayako's hand stilled on the mending. People are saying things. About the prisoners who came back. Saying you should have died rather than be captured. Saying you were treated too well. Saying you've been corrupted. We have been corrupted, Keiko said. We saw that kindness works. That treating people with dignity makes them stronger, not weaker. That security allows generosity. If that's corruption, then I'm corrupted. Don't say that where others can hear you, Ayako warned. There are men mostly who think we should have fought to the last child rather than surrender. They're angry that we survived. They need someone to blame for the loss, and returned prisoners are easy targets. Let them blame me. I'm alive. My daughter is alive. That's all that matters. But as the weeks passed, Keiko learned that survival came with a cost. She found work at a clinic run by American occupation forces. Her English and medical experience made her valuable. But the other Japanese staff whispered about her. Former prisoner. Captured. Surrendered. Probably collaborated. The words followed her like shadows. One day, a Japanese man spat at her feet as she walked to work. Traitor, you should have died with honor. She kept walking. What else could she do? Yuki had it worse. She tried to return to her teaching position, but the school refused to hire her. Former prisoner. Bad influence on children. What if she taught them American ideas? She came to visit Keiko in June, thin and desperate. I can't find work anywhere. No one will hire a former prisoner. They think we're contaminated, corrupted by American kindness. Then we create our own work, Keiko said. We teach English. Americans need translators. Businesses need people who understand both cultures. We have skills they need. And if that makes us collaborators, then we're collaborators who feed our families. I can live with that. They started a small school English lessons for Japanese citizens who wanted to work with occupation forces. It was controversial. Some called them traitors. But others, pragmatic people, who understood that Japan's future was tied to America's goodwill, sent their children to learn. Sachiko found different work. She volunteered at an orphanage run by American missionaries, the same orphanage where her brothers had ended up. The director, a woman named Sister Mary Catherine from Ohio, hired her immediately. You speak English, you understand both cultures, and you love these children, Sister Mary said. That's all I need to know. But Sachiko's father's family cut her off completely, disowned her for surviving capture, for working with Americans, for choosing life over death. They sent a letter. Sachiko told Keiko and Yuki when they met for tea in August. Tea provided by American aid drunk in a makeshift cafe built from rubble. It said I am no longer their daughter, that I dishonored my father's memory by living when he died, that I should have followed him into death. What did you write back? Yuki asked. Nothing. What could I say? That I chose life, that I learned kindness isn't weakness, that I saw Americans cry when we left and realized they were just people. Sachiko laughed bitterly. They wouldn't understand. They can't understand. To understand, you have to have seen what we saw, felt what we felt. So we carry it alone, Keiko said. The knowledge that another way exists, that we were lied to, that everything we believed was propaganda. Not alone, a voice said behind them. They turned. Fumiko stood there, thinner than before, but alive, smiling. Fumiko, Yuki jumped up. What are you doing in Tokyo? Looking for you three. I found Midori in Nagasaki last month. She's working as a translator for American reconstruction teams, making good money, sending half of it to the families of soldiers who died under her command. Penance, Keiko said. Or grace, Fumiko corrected. She's choosing to help rebuild rather than hold grudges. That's what we all need to do. She pulled letters from her bag. I've been writing to the others, the 47 of us. 12 have responded so far. We're all facing the same thing, judgment, ostracism, being called traitors. But we're all surviving, working, rebuilding, teaching our children that there's another way. What about the others? Sachiko asked. The 35 who haven't written back. Fumiko's face clouded. Some are dead. Suicide mostly. The shame was too much. Some disappeared, probably changed their names, moved to new cities where no one knows them. A few married Americans and emigrated. And some just want to forget. Want to pretend those 7 months never happened. The silence that followed was heavy with grief for the ones who couldn't carry the weight of survival. We have to remember for them, Keiko said finally. The ones who died, the ones who forgot. We have to carry this knowledge forward. We have to make sure their suffering and ours means something. Sai. How? Sachiko asked. How do we do that when everyone thinks we're traitors? We teach, Yuki said. We translate. We build bridges between Japan and America. We show people that the enemy we were taught to hate is just people. Flawed people, but people who believe in things worth believing in. Dignity, kindness, second chances. We write it down, Fumiko added. Our stories, what we saw, what we learned. So that someday when people are ready to hear it, the truth will be there waiting. Over the next years, that's what they did. Keiko opened her clinic teaching, alongside American doctors, training a new generation of Japanese nurses in techniques she'd learned in California. Yuki's school grew eventually, teaching hundreds of students. Sachiko's orphanage expanded, caring for children displaced by war, teaching them that they could be more than their trauma. And Fumiko wrote, every night by candlelight, then by electric light, as Tokyo rebuilt, she documented their story. 47 women who expected death and found life. Who were shown kindness by enemies and learned that enemies were just people who'd never met. In 1952, Keiko received a letter with an American stamp. She opened it with shaking hands. It was from Captain Chen. Brief, professional kind. He was practicing medicine in San Francisco now. He'd gotten married. He hoped she was well. He'd always wondered what happened to the Japanese nurse with steady hands who could have been a doctor. She wrote back, told him about her clinic, her daughter, her work teaching the next generation. Told him that his words, "You'd make a fine nurse," had sustained her through the hardest years. That believing she could be more than what she'd been told had saved her life. They corresponded for 30 years. Doctor and nurse, American and Japanese former enemies, who'd found something more important than nationality, mutual respect. In 1963, Michiko asked her mother a question. She was 24 now, a nurse herself, working alongside her mother in the clinic they'd built together. Did it make you less Japanese? Mother being a prisoner, being treated kindly by the enemy. Keiko thought about the question. About hot showers and chocolate and Americans who called her Miss. About Captain Chen and Lieutenant Morrison and Private Cooper. About Margaret Sullivan hugging Sachiko and believing that even enemies deserved compassion. No, my dear, she said finally. It made me more human. It taught me that nationality is just an accident of birth. But kindness. Kindness is a choice we make every day. And the choice to be kind, especially to those who've wronged us, that's what separates civilization from barbarism. Is that why you named the clinic what you did? Keiko looked up at the sign they'd painted years ago. The Stoneman Clinic. Named after the place that had changed her life. A small memorial to the idea that even in war, even between enemies, humanity could survive. Yes, she said. So we never forget that another way exists. In 1975, 30 years after the war ended, the 47 women who'd survived, now numbering only 33, gathered in Tokyo. Some had become teachers, translators, doctors, nurses. Some had married, raised children, rebuilt lives from ruins. Some still carried scars that no one could see. They met in Keiko's clinic, now a 3-story building serving 2,000 patients a month. Over tea, good tea, now not scavenged scraps, they shared stories. My grandson asked me yesterday what I learned from the war, Fumiko said. She was 70 now, gray-haired, still sharp. I told him I learned that hate is easy and kindness is hard. That anyone can be cruel to enemies, but it takes real strength to be compassionate. Did he understand? Yuki asked. Not yet, but he will. We're teaching them, all of us. In our schools, our clinics, our homes. We're teaching the next generation that there's another way. Do you think we succeeded? Sachiko asked. Do you think we made a difference? Keiko looked around the room at 33 elderly women who'd survived war capture judgment and the slow rebuilding of a nation. Women who'd chosen life over death, kindness, over bitterness, hope, over despair. Yes, she said, we succeeded, because we're here, because we remembered, because we carried the knowledge that humanity can survive even the worst horrors if we choose to hold on to it. They raised their teacups, a toast to survival, to memory, to the idea that even enemies can teach us how to be better humans. When Keiko died in 1989 at age 76, her funeral was attended by hundreds. Former patients, students she'd taught, Americans who'd known her in California and traveled to Japan to pay respects. Captain Chen, now retired, made the journey from San Francisco. He spoke at her service. I told Keiko once that she'd make a fine nurse. I was wrong. She became something better, a bridge between worlds. A reminder that even in our darkest moments, kindness can survive. She was a prisoner who learned that her captors were people, and she spent the rest of her life teaching others that same lesson. We are all poorer for her loss, and all richer for having known her. Michiko, now 50, scattered her mother's ashes in San Francisco Bay. Full circle. From the place where she'd learned that enemies were just people who'd never met, back to that same water that had brought her to that revelation. The 47 women, now down to 18 by the 1990s, then 12, then 6, never forgot. They met every year on September 8th, the anniversary of their arrival at Camp Stoneman. They told their stories to anyone who would listen. They wrote memoirs, gave lectures, taught classes on reconciliation and the power of choosing kindness over hate. The last surviving woman, Yuki Tanaka, died in 2006 at age 85. Her final interview, given days before her death, ended with these words: "We expected monsters and found people. We expected cruelty and found kindness. We expected to die and learn to live. And in learning to live, we discovered that the only thing that separates enemies from friends is the willingness to see each other as human. That lesson, purchased with so much pain, so much loss, so much confusion, that lesson is what we leave behind. Remember us not as prisoners or victims, but as witnesses. We saw what happens when kindness defeats hate, and we're telling you it's possible. It's hard, it's complicated, it's uncomfortable, but it's possible, and that possibility is worth fighting for." War teaches nations how to destroy. But sometimes, if we're lucky, if we're willing to see, it teaches individuals how to be human. 47 women learned that lesson in the most unexpected place, in the kindness of their captors. And they spent the rest of their lives ensuring that lesson wasn't lost. They were built by war and broken by kindness, but they rebuilt themselves into bridges. Bridges between nations, between cultures, between the hatred of what was and the hope of what could be. If you believe their names should be remembered, if you believe their lesson matters, in a world that still struggles to see enemies as human, share their story. Write a name in the comments below. Remember that 47 women expected death and found life. And in finding life, they found something even more precious: the knowledge that another way exists. That kindness can be stronger than cruelty. That choosing to see humanity in your enemy is the bravest act of all. Remember them. And in remembering, choose kindness, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because that choice, that simple, difficult, revolutionary choice, that's what separates the world we have from the world we could build.